Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another ranked and reviewed video. Hope you guys have been enjoying these thus far. Been going over a lot of my favorite metal bands, some of my favorite bands of all time, a few that I just really like. So in a sense, that does kind of limit the amount of videos I'm going to do in this series. There will be a finish line at some point because you can only have so many favorite bands of all time, I guess, unless I do this into my 80s and I pick up new bands along the way. Anyway, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out all the other videos. I have all the other ranked and reviewed videos from other bands you might like, especially if you're a metalhead, in the ranked and reviewed playlist. I'm going to spend the first couple minutes of this video kind of setting the stage for what got me into In Flames, what got me back into them, and more importantly, kind of addressing the divide amongst the fan base. The short story of it all is it all comes down to preference, okay? But if you want to go straight to where I start my ranking and then, of course, see the ranking at the end, you could always just skip to the end, or you can go to the timestamps down in the pinned comments where I generally put all my numbered spots. So first and foremost, I'm doing 12 In Flames albums. I'm going from the Jester race, which I believe came out in 96, all the way up to their last album, I the Mask, which came out in 2019. That's 12 albums. I'm only doing the albums with Anders on vocals. There's no reason for me to do Subterranean or Lunar Strain. I think I gave those a small listen, but it's just not the same. They're not bad albums by any means. They're just not my style. Different vocalist, different time. So I'm just doing the Anders albums, and 12 is a round number, so that's why I'm doing this particular list. So I've been listening to In Flames since roughly either 2006 or 2007, early 2007, when Come Clarity was their most recent album. Upon looking back, I don't know if commercially that was like their biggest one or not, or like the singles off of that album or what kind of launched them, and then their follow-up album, Sense of Purpose, just skyrocketed them further. But it seems like I came in during an odd phase. But hey, maybe I came in around the same time as everybody else. A lot of my metalhead friends, especially my sophomore year in high school, were listening to a lot of music like that. It was the golden age of metalcore, and Flames came out with their own version of that. So that's how long I've been listening to them. A little on again, off again over the years, but like my senior year, I was listening to Sense of Purpose, and then listened to a little bit of Sounds of a Playground Fading in 2011 because I had a good friend at the time. Again, can't stress this enough, at the time. And if he's listening to this, I don't really miss you, but I hope you're doing okay. His favorite band was In Flames. So they were present in my life from like 2006 to like 2011, but then I did listen to them for a while. Much like with Megadeth, I kind of just had a major resurgence and decided to go back and listen to everything, and I realized, holy shit, In Flames is one of my, if they're in my top 10 favorite bands, they're probably my 10th favorite. I fucking love In Flames. Really like all their albums, and that's why I'm doing this one right now. So what else did I want to say? Yeah, so let's address the elephant in the room. I'm obviously not the first person to rank the discography. A lot of times it does come down to preference. I'm fully aware that there's been different eras of In Flames. So I'm going to just go ahead, spoil a little bit of the video right here, and let you know if I don't fully please the true death metal heads of In Flames that hold their first 3 to 4 albums going as far as 1999 or 2000, and everything else sucks afterwards. There's going to be a part of this video that pisses you off, but you might be pleasantly surprised which album gets towards the top. So stick around for the whole video. And obviously In Flames were pivotal during a lot of these different eras. I'm a huge fan of In Flames because of all the different styles they've had. They've basically touched on every single one of my favorite genres of metal, and they do it very well. They do the metal alternative sound, the metalcore alternative sound. They play in fucking drop A sharp, which I love, and when they play in C standard, it sounds great. And then Anders' voice is just the fucking shit. It doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't matter if it's Jester Race. It doesn't matter if it's I the Mask. His vocals have always been awesome to me. But you're going to find an interesting sequence of these albums, but it ultimately comes down to preference, and I will explain my ranking as we go. So if you're ready to kind of muscle through it, put on your, I don't know, your ears, your metal ears, and have a listen. Because In Flames is one of my favorite bands, and just like with Megadeth, I'm really glad I brought them back in my life. It was like a seed that was planted early on, but then eventually it came back and fully blossomed. So let's go ahead and get started. At the number 12 spot, we have, I don't have the years written down, but I'm going to try to get them correct. At the number 12 spot, we have their 2014 release, Siren Charms. Now, just like with a lot of my other ranking videos, I did check out a lot of other people's rankings just for reference, not inspiration, but just to kind of see what a lot of people think. I've seen quite a bit of variance with these other rankings, but most people put Siren Charms towards the bottom. I gave that album a 7.87 out of 10, and there are a couple spots on this list where a couple albums were clumped together as a tie, but I ranked one higher than the other because of a tiebreaker, which I'll explain later. Siren Charms, while it's technically their worst album, I wouldn't be ranking I wouldn't be ranking shit really if I didn't find value in all their albums. Songs like Paralyzed, the title track Siren Charms, and Monsters are all fantastic tracks. It's just that this is just a flat album. The song that really dragged this album down was When the World Explodes. Even though it's got such a badass intro, it just kind of weighed it down. Pretty much every In Flames album has some strong level of consistency and flow to it, but let me just put it this way. The bottom albums, because there's like a three-way tie between the three bottom, the bottom got a 7.87 and the top got an 8.6. So there's only so much margin to work with between these 12 albums, but Siren Charms, I kind of had a feeling it would be at the bottom. It's just flat. I don't mind that Anders does less screaming, or basically no screaming in this album. The guitar work is a little experimental here and there, like the intro to Everything Gone does a cool harmonic pick scrape, or not like between the screens, but up and down the frets, like Sweet Pea from System of a Down. So there's some cool stuff on this album. It's just kind of like not an album that I would listen to from start to finish generally, but there are good tracks. Again, Paralyzed is catchy. In Plain View's a good opening track. Again, the title track is one of the best, and then Monsters in the Ballroom is probably the best track on the album. It's got a really catchy, thrashy riff. But all the other songs kind of just fall a little bit flat, but then the lowest one I gave was When the World Explodes at 7.2, which means it's good. So no mediocre or bad songs from In Flames at all. So that's number 14, Siren Charms. No sentimental value, but definitely worth looking into if you're an In Flames fan. All right. I am nervous, but not really, because I'm on the internet and I'm not really afraid of people's opinions. The number 11 spot, and again, muscle through this, all right? It's going to get better for you, I promise. At number 11, we have their 1997 release, Horacle. And again, this is like the holy trinity of like their early melodic mellow death albums. Now look, for its time, 1997, the fucking year of our Lord, where Limp Bizkit's $3 Bill Y'all album came out, Horacle for the time was an excellent album. It broke a lot of ground, and Flames obviously spearheaded the whole melodic death, Scandinavian or whatever it's called, Gothenburg metal scene, whatever it was. At the time, this album was probably among the fucking best, but it out of all of their old work, this one just jives with me the least. There's only two songs that I gave higher than an 8 out of 10. That was The Hive and, of course, Episode 666. Episode 666 is one of their best songs. But the rest of the album kind of averaged between a 7.6 and a 7.9. So overall, I gave this album a 7.87 as well, just like with Siren Charms. But I gave the edge to Horacle because it would really be a travesty to say that this is their worst album. But it has Episode 666 and The Hive, and just for the time, this album is brilliant. But I have no sentimental value to this album, and it just doesn't seem as aggressive or as experimental on the guitar work or on the vocals as, say, the other Holy Trinity albums like Jester Race or Colony. So that's why Horacle's down a little low, but fear not, things are about to get a little bit more fun. And by things getting a little bit more fun, I don't mean at this moment, but let's talk about the number 9 spot, the number 10 spot. It's going to get more fun later on. At the number 10 spot, we have Sounds of a Playground Fading from 2011. This one just got like a couple points, like 0.06 higher than the previous two. Again, this was kind of the last album that was around when I was listening to them more actively before I came back to them. But it was mostly Deliver Us and maybe another track. But this is a pretty consistent album. There's really no bad tracks on it. My favorites are Enter Tragedy and The Puzzle. Deliver Us is a decent enough single. A New Dawn, I think, or A New Dream, one of the last tracks, is a good song too. But again, really no sentimental value here, and it just didn't age that well. And I think this was like the first album they did without their major guitar player, head writer. So they had a mountain ahead of them, and they climbed it. They scaled it. There's good enough songs on here. Sounds of a Playground Fading, the opening track, is pretty great. But this one just doesn't stick out to me a whole lot. So I'm going to go through probably the first handful of albums pretty quickly on this ranking. It's 12 albums. I'm going to try not to make this more than 30 minutes, but we'll have a little bit more fun as we go later on. So Sounds of a Playground Fading, aged decently enough, but it's not one of my favorites. But on some level, it got the job done, and In Flames have been consistent enough over the years to where maybe if they did or didn't alienate fans along the way, that's why they've managed to stay relevant, and they are definitely a hard working band, and that's why I love their discography. All right, at the number 9 spot, we have, I believe it's 2004, Soundtrack to Your Escape. This was technically my first or second experience with In Flames, because all my metalhead friends were showing me like Take This Life or the rest of Come Clarity, but a friend of mine, my really close friend from junior and senior year and sophomore year of high school, don't know what he's up to now, but I miss him. Nick, if you're listening, what's up? Miss playing guitar with you, buddy. He had this album on his computer, so I had this album on my iPod, but only a handful of tracks made it to the end because my iPod had limited space. That was Touch of Red, one of my favorite tracks, and at least at the time, I think that's it. But upon re-listening to it again, and again, these bottom 4 are essentially like a three or four-way tie. But I gave this one the edge because my favorite tracks off this album are my favorites out of all of them. Quiet Place, Touch of Red, Superhero of the Computer or whatever, Dialed 595 Escape. It's a lot like Sounds of a Playground Fading, where there's really no bad tracks, but the best tracks are only so great. Like 1 or 2 of them might break my top 10 or top 15 favorite In Flames tracks, but I gave Soundtrack to Your Escape the edge because it has Touch of Red and Quiet Place, which is an awesome single. And just the darkness, the crunchiness of the tones, like the guitar sounds really evil in this one, and there's like a splash cymbal that gets used a lot, especially like in, I think it's Dead Alone or Like You Matter, whatever it's called, Like You Better. There's a lot of splash use, and it just carries a tiny little bit of like an alternative nu metal sound a little bit, and it just kind of gives it that edge. So Soundtrack to Your Escape, again, the bottom 4, there's not a whole lot of sentimental value for any of those albums, but they were worth revisiting, and they do have songs on there that are like on my In Flames playlist. So, and again, to review, Siren Charms, I have Paralyzed, Siren Charms, and Monsters in the Ballroom. Horacle, I have episode 666, and I think I have The Hive. Jotun's a good opening track, too. Sounds of a Playground Fading, of course, I have The Puzzle and Enter Tragedy. And then, of course, like I just mentioned, for soundtrack, I have Quiet Place and Touch of Red. So there will be times, especially in metal music, where the single is the best. Anyway, I think I'm finally going to break into a higher tier here, where the ranking became easier because I didn't have any tiebreakers I had to do. Okay, at the number 8 spot, we have their 2002 release, Reroute to Remain. I lied again. So my friend at the time that I was living with, who was the huge In Flames fan, him and I would actually listen to this album a little bit in his car. So a few of the songs have a little bit of sentimental value, if you can call it that. Again, this wasn't exactly a friendship that was my favorite, and it didn't end amicably or anything, but didn't mean there weren't some decent times in there. Reroute to Remain, I know, was kind of like a big turning point for In Flames, and a lot of people love this album. And again, just because I have an album towards the bottom or in the middle doesn't mean I don't find a lot of value in it. It's just I'm ranking albums here. Remember that. These are whole albums. And unfortunately, Reroute to Remain has a couple of, not a couple, just one, weaker tracks. I gave Egonomic the lowest score of 7.3. I don't think any song dropped below a 7. So that's how much I like In Flames. Every song is at least good. Not like okay or decent or mediocre. System, Drifter, of course, Cloud Connected, Trigger, all great tracks. Dawn of a New Day is actually a really nice song. I like Minus, Dismiss the Critics. And then Dark Signs. Sorry, I shorthanded a few of the song titles, but there was enough consistency on this album to where it kind of ranked not right in the middle. It's at the number 8 spot, but it's kind of like at the higher middle part. Not really any tracks that just grabbed me if we're excluding the single Cloud Connected. Cloud Connected's a really catchy track, and the key that it's played in, that key has a lot of sentimental value and personality to me, and that's why those particular songs from In Flames have a little bit of an easier time grabbing a hold of me. If they're playing in drop C standard when they're not playing in drop A sharp. So when they're playing in that minor scale, just those notes of like G and G sharp, like with the power chords and everything and the harmonics or the harmonies between them, it just fucking gets me. And that's why Cloud Connected kind of probably elevated this one a little bit higher up. And that was a single I slept on for a while. Excuse me. All right. At the number 7 spot, which if you're already going through this list, you're seeing certain albums that are going to be pretty high up. You're like, what the fuck is this list? But hey, this is my list, and this is how I feel, and you're probably going to find some difference of opinion, and that's what makes this fun. Number 7 spot, we have their most recent album, I the Mask. So this is not that the past albums were devoid of this in any way. I did mention a couple songs already that were catchy, but part of the reason why Horacle was towards the bottom was because there were no hooks. Didn't mean I didn't enjoy the music. Doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the vocals, but there were just no hooks. Okay, if you want to call it shallow, or if you want to call it the more simple-minded side of me, I'm a man that likes hooks. Why do you think I love nu metal so much? Because it's fucking catchy. I the Mask is loaded with hooks. And aside from the track This Is Our House, which many people would agree with me that it's kind of a cringy chant song, but hey, the verses and I guess the pre-chorus are great, but it's just the chant and the I guess the regular chorus are just kind of weak. But beyond that though, the opening track Voices hits hard. I Am Above is a great single. Highest rated tracks on this album were We Will Remember, really catchy, beautiful song, really lyrically driven. And then my favorite track is Deep Inside, very underrated In Flames track with interesting key changes and interesting, probably like the key of F or F sharp. I just like it when In Flames kind of mixes things up a little bit, and they throw a curveball in while remaining catchy while they're doing it. So I the Mask got a perfect 8 out of 10 for me, which makes it a great album, solidly great album. Every other album, I guess you could kind of round up and say I think they're all great too, but this one got a solid 8, and I think it just proves that after 12 or 13 or 14 albums, if you want to count the other albums, but their 12th album with Anders, that they're still putting out music like this. It's really powerful. So this is probably why you're seeing me rank I the Mask higher than probably a lot of other lists that you're going to see. All right, number 6. This is probably going to be a little bit of redemption for me for putting Horacle towards the bottom. At number 6, we have the Jester Race, which I believe came out in 96. So Jester Race, their first album with Anders. This one was way better than Horacle, in my opinion. This one got an 8.03 out of 10. And by the way, I only did standard edition albums. Jester Race has a song called Goliaths Disarm Their Davids or something. But that's a bonus track, so I didn't include that song in this ranking, but that's an excellent song. And if I included that one, Jester Race probably would have scored a little bit higher, maybe like the 4th or the 5th spot. But it's at 6, right? Yeah. Artifacts, third track, Lord Hypnos and December Flower, all tremendously good songs. Not a single weak track on this album by any means. Not a single song, except for Graveland, sorry. That one got a 7.6, but every other song got a 7.9 or higher. And again, it's melodic death metal, not a whole lot of catchiness or hooks, but like the clean guitar work going on, the instrumentals, he's a guitar player. Anders' voice, it all just sounds really good. Like, this is an awesome first release, and I read in quite a few places that this album got like on several like top metal lists of all time lists of like metal albums, and I was like, yeah, substantively, it is an excellent metal album. It just doesn't, that particular era of In Flames really isn't my preferred type of metal. I'm not really a melodic death metal guy. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. Doesn't mean I can't listen to it occasionally, but it's just not what I normally spin. I like new metal. I like alternative metal. I like metalcore. I like deathcore. But melodic death metal, I got to be in a certain mood for that. But Jester Race is a great album, to say the least, and I'm happy that it got the number 6 spot. But let's go ahead and get to the top 5. And once again, another part of the video, a lot of people are probably going to be scratching their heads. Many other lists that I saw ranked my number 5 album towards the bottom, but this is where subjectivity, X factors, and all that stuff really come into play. This album has a lot of sentimental value for me. Number 5 spot, we have, I believe it's 2016, the Battles album. So 2 albums ago. Not their last album, but the one before that, Battles. Yeah, it's a poppier album. Yeah, In Flames got a little bit more experimental here. But Battles is heavier than the Siren Charms album. Battles has some of the absolute, not across the board start to finish, but my favorite tracks off of Battles are easily some of my favorite In Flames tracks ever. Drained is an excellent start. By the way, Battles got an 8.04, so only a hair better than the Jester Race, a hair better than Eye the Mask. But again, tiebreaker is generally the X factor of nostalgia, sentimental value, and of course, the top tracks on that album, do I like them more than the top tracks on the other albums? The End, track number 2, I gave that one an 8.8. I fucking love it. It's got that perfect alternative metal chorus that I love. I know it's heavy, it's got growling, it's got chuggy guitars. You know, I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of the flatness of the guitar tone, but on some level it works. The synths, they work, and God, do I even dare say it? The album probably could have been fine or even a little better without it, but I'm not even really bothered by like the kid choir effect that they used on some of the tracks, like in The End or Before I Fall. This album actually has one of their worst songs though, Through My Eyes. It just sounds like he's taking a shit. Like, it sounds like a traditional metalcore In Flames song that could have maybe been off of Sense of Purpose, but like the way it was mixed, his growling voice just does not fit. Like, it sounds like a poorly produced demo that got mastered really well. But The End, In My Room, don't even get me started with In My Room. Like, the fucking bass tone during the chorus, the actual chorus, songs like Sand, but it keeps slipping through like sand. Yeah, sorry. Just a lot of catchy melodic metalcore stuff. Like, they went from melodic death metal to like melodic metalcore and like melodic alternative metalcore. And Battles just has a lot of catchy tracks on it. Wallflower's fantastic. Here Until Forever. Again, basically, aside from The Truth, which is okay, like the first 6-7 songs are all pretty damn awesome. So that's why Battles ranked higher up, because my favorite tracks off of there definitely elevated it, and it's got that sentimental value. Battles is a great album for me. I know it's not their like most commercially successful, and a lot of In Flames fans put this towards the bottom, so that's why it's fun to hear other perspectives, I guess. So, number 4 spot, I'm surprised this album ranked this high, but it aged really well. Their 2008, I think, release, Sense of Purpose. I was listening to this album when I was a senior in high school when it came out. I originally thought it fell pretty flat after the aggressiveness of Come Clarity, but this album aged really well. And the only track on here that got the lowest score, and this is going to sound bad because it's one of their bigger singles, I'm just not a massive fan of it. Alias and March to the Shore, the last track, they both got 7.8s. But Mirror's Truth is a great opening track. Sober and Irrelevant. Like, this album has a lot of metalcore aggressiveness. It's just they dialed back the gain on the guitars a little bit, and he sings a little bit more. But this is a heavy album with a lot of good melodies and everything injected into it. This would be a great starting album for somebody trying to get into In Flames if the heaviest stuff isn't their favorite. I would say if you're trying to get into In Flames and you're kind of more of a mainstream metal fan, listen to Battles, Eye the Mask, or A Sense of Purpose. I wouldn't go for Siren Charms. I would wait until you're a little bit more established with In Flames before you gave that a shot, because it's just objectively not their best album. But Sense of Purpose at the number 4 spot makes a lot of sense. It aged really well, and it has fucking Sleepless Again on it. Again, radio rock, radio metal, then breaking into the more mainstream stuff. Sometimes metal bands do it super well, and In Flames did that, and that's a song that I slept on for a long time, but like that post-chorus synth with that guitar riff going on in the background is iconic. So I actually gave Sleepless Again a 9 out of 10. 9 meaning excellent. And of course 10 just means fucking godlike, flawless. I rarely ever give songs a 10. It's super rare. You've probably heard me say it maybe once or twice on any of my ranked videos. Maybe one Architects song or one Sum 41 song. But yeah, that's why Sense of Purpose got this high, because the best have the higher scores than the other albums, and the worst have higher scores than the lower albums as well. So very solid album. And Chosen Pessimist is a long-ass track, but it's actually really epic and really good. A lot of great build-up and there's just a lot of fucking good gems on this album. Like, Move Through Me is really catchy. I like that one a lot. Drenched in Fear, fucking the second track, Disconnected, I'm the Highway. You know, and again, personally, Alias isn't my favorite song, but it doesn't mean it's not a great single. So if you want to listen to that, go ahead. You know, go get some MySpace emo vibes from that track. You know, even that had value back then. Whew. Okay, now let's get to the top 3, which the only thing they all have in common is they all start with the letter C. But this is kind of my redemption. Anybody that was like kind of pulling their hair and wondering how the fuck I put Oracle towards the bottom or how I put Battles so high up, my top 3 are very much a metalhead's wet dream. So I'm really exposing how much of a heavy metal bastard that I am with these top 3. The top 3 ranked higher by quite a bit if we're talking about margins. You know, the number 3 spot got an 8.42, the number 2 spot got a 8.49, and then the top spot got an 8.6, while Sense of Purpose got an 8.11. So that's at least a 0.3 difference between the 3 and the 4 spot. And moving on. So top 3, I kind of already knew that they were going to be this, but I had to do it anyway. So, and it's at least one of them is different than what I've been seeing on other rankings, and that's why I'm having fun with this. So 2 and 3 spot were nearly tied, but I gave the edge to the number 2 spot, obviously. Number 3 is the turn of the century release, Clayman. iconic In Flames album, probably their most popular album. I gave it to the number 3 spot. This is the album, and most importantly, the opening track, Bullet Ride. That is the song that I randomly heard on some metal radio Spotify shuffle thingy that reignited my love and my interest in Flames. Some awesome-ass track just came on. I'm like, who is this? Oh, it's an old In Flames song that I've never heard before. Next thing you know, I'm going through all their fucking albums, making a playlist, and just loving it. So Bullet Ride is the song that really got me back into them. But I'm like, this can't be the only great track. What about the rest of the album? There's not a single track on this album that placed below an 8, except for Brush the Dust Away. That's the weak track. That's the one that probably prevented it from being the 2 spot. But generally speaking, this album averaged like an 8.4. Songs like Bullet Ride getting a 9.1, elevating it higher up. And Only for the Week, of course, fucking one of In Flames' biggest singles, Only for the Week, 8.8. Super catchy, super bouncy. It's a nice blend of their old and new, you know? So some people say that this is where In Flames, like the metalhead elitists, this is where they'll say that In Flames sold out. Andrew started singing more. I don't know. I wasn't part of that. I didn't grow up with In Flames, so I don't have that potent, cathartic tie to it. But as somebody that came of age during the golden age of metalcore, this album fucking fits right in there. And In Flames was ahead of its time, which is why I could even say that Jester, Race, and Horacle, for the time, are excellent albums. But Pinball Map, As for the Future, Square Nothing, Clayman, there's just a lot of really good melodic and, of course, traditional metalcore with melodies tied in there. It's just like you can see how In Flames inspired bands like Killswitch Engage or Trivium or maybe As I Lay Dying. Like, Clayman was definitely a blueprint for that. But Swim has got some great guitar work, Suburban Me, Another Day, and Quicksand. Like, I just have nothing negative to say at all about this album. I just noticed that I don't remember what it was I didn't like about the track Brush the Dust Away. I gave it like a 7.6, which doesn't mean it was bad. It was just my least favorite track. But Clayman has Bullet Ride and Only for the Week, and then a bunch of other solid middle 8 tracks that elevate this one towards the top. And it's only by a hair that it differentiated it from the number 2 spot. But before I get to that, though, it should also be noted that they did put out a 20-year anniversary, celebration of Clayman. They like remastered it and they re-recorded a handful of the tracks. They sound awesome. So make sure you check out the original version of Clayman from the year 2000, but also make sure you check out the 2020 release. They remastered it and they re-recorded a handful of really good tracks, including Bullet Ride and, of course, Only for the Week. Basically, Anders is proving that he still has the fucking vocal chops to do all that. Anders is definitely one of my favorite vocalists of all time. He's just got so much going for him on the heavier end, the soft end. Like, it's just insane how good In Flames are. All right, I ended up going over 30 minutes here, so let's get these top 2 done. All right, at the number 2 spot, I'm very happy with my top 2, by the way. At the number 2 spot, we have their 1999 release, Colony. I lied again. Turns out another bit of In Flames that I knew about was, I forgot if it was the original Tony Hawk Underground or if it was Tony Hawk Underground 2. My guess is it would be the original Tony Hawk Underground. Embodying the Invisible, the opening track, is on there. So after hearing like Come Clarity and a few other things, wait a second, no, or was it American Wasteland? I don't know, but fucking, I played one of those games late, and it was after I knew who In Flames was. Anyway, fucking, I got to that game late, either way. It must have been Underground 2 or something. If you're pounding on your keyboard going, no, motherfucker, it's Underground, or whatever, just, we'll make the correction later on. at any rate, I knew about Embody the Invisible, and I thought it sounded different. I didn't realize it was an old album. I was too young to understand that artists could release music before the album that you first heard. Colony fucking kicked my ass. Pretty much an 8.5 out of 10. Colony has one of my all-time favorite In Flame tracks on it, which is the title track, Colony. Gave that one a 9.2 out of 10. Easily one of the best tracks ever. Catchy-ass riff, hits hard, the vocals hit hard, the melodies hit hard, the solos hit hard. Embody the Invisible is an excellent opening track. It's just catchy, you just want to skateboard to it. Ordinary Story, Scorn, Zombie, Pollers, Deanders. Every track on here fucking slaps. There's not a single... The lowest rated track that I gave was Coerced something. I shorthanded the title. It's Coerced, Coercion something. Got an 8.2. But that means every track is at least great. There's no good tracks. They're all great. Embody the Invisible, Colony, fucking Insipid 2000, Resin, all amazing tracks. I don't have a whole lot of sentimental value or anything to that, but just like with regards to possibly redeeming myself in the metal elitist community, which if you're offended by that, just fucking take a joke. There are metal elitists out there that think In Flames, unless they're doing pure death metal or melodic death metal, that they suck. But this is kind of my redeeming factor. This is a holy grail In Flames album that I'm putting at the number 2 spot. So there it is. I think Colony is their best work from the 90s by a long shot. It's got almost the perfect blend of like everything that I love about In Flames, but it just has some raw energy, and it was like their alternative stuff, but doesn't mean that there weren't some core elements in there. But this is just kind of where they did it best, and it was just an excellent transition period between, I guess, what they did in Horacle and then what they ended up doing in Clayman. This was like a perfect heavy transition between those two. And of course, unlike Horacle, and I think unlike Jester Race Colony, they actually dropped it down to drop A sharp. So that extra heavy edge just does it for me. Speaking of drop A sharp, let's talk about their fucking best album now. The number 1 spot, the album that basically started it all for me, their 2006 release, Come Clarity, which I didn't fucking get the album title or album cover for years. I thought it was like these two robots or these two things fighting. It turns out it's a guy ripping his heart out and showing it to you. What can we say? We were all kids once. Come Clarity is one of my favorite albums of all time. Come Clarity does not slow down for a fucking minute. Where the weakest track on Colony got an 8.2, the weakest track on Come Clarity got an 8.3. Our Infinite Solution and Vanishing Light both got 8.3s. And Leeches. But this has some of my all-time favorite In Flames tracks. But it also has, aside from Colony and Clayman, this album has the strongest opening track, Take This Life. In Flames went full mid-2000s golden age metalcore on this album. They came aggressive. Anders came out hard on the vocals, the fucking tones, the mixing, the mastering. Like, it's just a very pleasing, heavy-ass album to listen to. It doesn't mean that it's devoid of melody. If you want a nice, soft, metal alternative anthem, go no further than the title track, Come Clarity, which actually aged really well. I was a little foolish back then to sleep on this track, but years later, when I listened to it again, it sounds amazing. I love Come Clarity, the actual title track. But Take This Life sounds great. It's got an excellent little little guitar melody diddly that's harmonized. It sounds fantastic. But my favorite tracks on this album, Reflect the Storm. Oh, God, you cannot fuck with that intro. You cannot fuck with that chorus. It's just a perfect, absolute blend of melodic metalcore. It's well done, of course. It's played in C standard, and it's got that minor scale and key going for it, and it always gives me goosebumps. Reflect the Storm is one of those songs that's like on my adrenaline playlist, or like my dopamine playlist, or like if I need to listen to a playlist of songs to like get me amped up or make me feel good. It's called my dopamine rush mix. Reflect the Storm is on it. Dead End has an excellent feature. Sounds like some Evanescence shit. Really great track. Scream is a fucking sleeper of a song. Very underrated gem. The chorus was inspired by Raptor Riot's Sabotaged. I have the fucking nerve to say that a song that I subconsciously wrote 10 years later, No, listen to Scream and then listen to the song Sabotage from Raptor Riot, and you'll hear a small... it was unconscious. It was by chance that two notes back to back to start a chorus happened to be similar. I didn't do that on purpose. But that's part of the reason why I love Scream so much, because it reminds me of one of my fucking songs. Vacuum, Pacing Death's Trail, another couple of excellent underrated songs. Best song on the album, though, and probably one of my all-time favorite In Flames songs, Crawl Through Knives. It was my favorite song back in the day. It's still one of my favorites to this day. It fucking hits hard. The way he screams, "In Flames," at the end of the chorus, like, it just makes you get you hard. Anyway, and then Your Bedtime Story is Scaring Everybody is just such an interesting, creepy, but awesome closing to the album. So a lot of Come Clarity wins across the board on everything. Even if it's not 100% my favorite genre or era, In Flames fucking dominated this. The album never slowed down. It's got all the sentimental value. It sounds pleasing to the ear. It's definitely sonically one of their best recorded albums. The vocals hit hard. The guitars hit hard. And just years later. And of course, like I mentioned, it's got a couple of my all-time favorite tracks on here. And that's what happens with the top albums. They typically carry my most favorite songs. And I rank those favorite songs high enough to where the weight brings it up higher, especially in like closely contested rankings. So this video went on, as usual, longer than anticipated, but that is my ranking of the In Flames discography, 12 albums. From worst to best, we have Siren Charms, Horacle, Sounds of a Playground Fading, Soundtrack to Your Escape, Reroute to Remain, I the Mask, The Jester Race, Battles, The Sense of Purpose, Clayman, Colony, Come Clarity. I will do my best to remember to put all those in the timestamps so that you guys can skip around if you so desire. But thank you guys for listening. That is my fucking ranking of one of my favorite bands, doing 12 albums there, kind of reviewing them too. And as usual, usually the first album took me the number one spot took me the longest to talk about. You know why? Because I had the most to fucking say about it. That's how this life works, kids. So feel free to put down below what you agree or disagree with, or why you like certain albums more than others or less than others. What are some of your favorite tracks off of each of their albums? Do you have any In Flames stories or any memories or any sentimental value that you wish to share? Please post it below, obviously. And once the fucking comment box is going to change, please post your comments in the box down below. Like, you really at the fucking point, you can't even see it because I'm doing an audio version of this. All right. So that's my video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and check out the other rankings. I predominantly do metal music, but I will be doing some other genres here soon. But like I said, I'm a fucking metalhead, so I'm going to be mostly doing metal music. And hey, again, if you're new to In Flames, you've never really listened to them, and you want like the real heavy shit, listen to their first 3 albums. If you want a little bit more mainstream stuff, listen to Sense of Purpose, Battles, I the Mask. All great places to start. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.